Okay, we're live.
We're live. Hey!
I'm Carrie Peabody.
Jennifer Dodson.
I'm Amanda Kimball.
Kathy Fear.
Okay. So. Who's going to ask the questions again? Because
oh, she's not here.
She's not here. That's okay.
Sorry.
I can ask the first question. I've got them all pulled up.
Okay.
The first couple of questions are about that first video where he was speaking up against same-sex marriage. And it says, what principles of effective speaking did you see in his speech?
Well, he didn't talk about
I didn't feel it was real effective.
Yeah, he didn't talk about us. He didn't talk about the community. And he didn't talk about himself.
Yeah, the only part that he said about himself was, I'm a 20-year-old man, but I'm speaking.
Yes.
And then all of his speech, from what I could tell, it was just biblically.
Now, are these effective? Okay. Are these effective principles we're talking about, or ineffective?
Yeah. These are supposed to be effective principles that we're talking about, and it's asking what was the effective data. So the only thing I could see was that he brought up just the data from a biblical point of view.
I know. He cited his source. He used the Bible.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else.
I know.
Well, and I think that one thing we watched, it says you should have a narrative or a story, and he really wasn't telling. He was just citing.
Okay, hang on here. Okay, I've got to bring up my notes really quick. Because I did have something in here. Where did it go? Okay. He did have passion. He was passionate. Okay, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used his emotions.
Passionate. Okay, so that was a good thing. You know, that was effective on that. That was about it.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Second question?
It was hard to
think
take him seriously. It really was.
He was just
I don't think
so
ever
serious in his speech that I almost tuned him out the first time.
Yes.
I had to go back and rewatch it just so that I could actually focus on the questions we were supposed to answer with it.
Yep.
I don't know if he ever really stated what his position was. He just
Well, that's
started.
the next question. It says, what was the basis and or the premises for his stance?
He really didn't ever state that. He just started quoting scripture.
He
Well,
was
the
just
basis was he kind of was talking for what he was saying in the voice of the Lord, basically.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, what was that again?
I was saying that he would, at the very beginning, he says, I'm a 20-year-old, but I'm here to talk on behalf of the Lord, was pretty much what he said.
Yeah, voice of the Lord.
That's interesting. That's what I remember out of his whole speech, too.
Yeah, same here. I was just like, what? Okay. And then he just started talking scriptures, and and sin. That is what kept coming to my head. Was it was sin.
So I think you probably turned people off when he started doing that because you're attacking when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody was listening, they'd probably shut them off.
I don't know what that is.
It's someone giving us a call from another YouTube, like they're starting up another thing. Just a second, I'll see who it is. Jesse's trying to start up the video. I'll invite her again.
Okay, we can start talking about the next question. What was the basis for his stance?
Oh, I thought that's what we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm. That was the second question.
Yeah, that's
the voice of the
what we're
Lord.
talking about.
So he used scripture to condemnation, that kind of thing. That was his basic stance, was the scriptures and what was ordained to God. So, okay, that one's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Hi, Jesse.
Hi.
How was your last class?
Good.
Good.
Jesse, you look like an angel.
Must be the light. Yeah.
There's a window behind me. The sun keeps like coming and going. Let me see if I can close the shade.
It's a beautiful view. It's like, wow, she's got this aura about her.
Best part is the Texas flag.
No, the flag is not the aura. Give me a...
Go Longhorns.
I don't think so. Go Huskies.
Boo.
What?
We're talking football teams.
Huskies.
I know, exactly.
We finally won a game after having a losing streak. Come on now, we beat the Ducks.
Well, anybody can beat the Ducks.
I was thinking when they were like, oh, they beat the Ducks, I was like, whoa, woo. Anyways.
Who initiated the call?
Amanda.
Amanda. Woohoo.
Yay, Amanda.
I'm glad somebody knows how to work this thing.
I don't see. Well, I was calling because I didn't see an invite. So I.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I had got everyone.
So we're on the third question.
You are.
Are you still up
We're on
for?
the first question, but we're down to the third if you were on the fence.
Y'all forgot to call me?
I could have sworn I did call you. I'm so sorry.
I was like, it's not coming. There's no phone call, so I tried to call all of you. Oh well. So the third question. So who decided to lead the discussion since I wasn't here?
Carrie was asking the questions, and I was trying to.
You can take over, Jesse.
You can take over, Jesse. You're great.
I'm fine.
We're on advocate number 1. If you were on the fence, that's where we're at.
If I was on this, okay. So did you ask the question? Has anybody contributed to that question yet?
No.
No.
We haven't.
That guy turned me off 100%. Like he was so.
Yeah.
So which way would you go? I mean,
if I were on the fence and I heard him, I would go the opposite way. I would go pro gay marriage.
Yep.
In a red hot second. He was so judgmental and so just, I don't know, it just did not. He was passionate, so I'll give him credit for that, and he was articulate, but he was really angry and vitriolic, so that is not very persuasive ever.
Attacked.
Yeah.
You're not gonna. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually going to move those, what you just said, the angry and the judgmental. I'm going to move those down actually to the less effective,
Yeah.
because that's why he was so less effective on that speech, is because he was so judgmental and angry.
Yeah, very condemning. I agree.
Well, hell, fire, and brimstone doesn't usually get people on your side.
No.
He just didn't tie us into the whole speech. He
There was no story. There was no, what's the word I'm looking for? He didn't relate it to us at all.
Yeah, he focused too much on the sin and not on the family. There was no family. He focused on the sin. And
he's the kind of guy that's going to come out in a couple years.
Yeah.
Really?
I'm serious. Like, he's so angry about it. And it I don't know. People like that, it always makes me wonder where the anger is coming from and what they're hiding. And he's the kind of guy that I would not be one bit surprised if he came out of the closet, like, down the line.
Really?
Truly. Something causing his anger.
He's very extremist, yes. But there are a lot of people like that. I mean, you can meet them every day. Talk about the political elections right now. You can get a lot of extremists coming out.
Yeah. I was thinking he's only 20 and he's got all this rage in him about this issue. I'm like, it had to have come from the way he was brought up. Because a lot of the times when parents feel they have that strong emotion about something, it does go towards their children, and their children then start to feel that way. And I really think that he was probably brought up very strong Christian, Catholic, who knows exactly what religion, but I do think that did focus into him having that rage, possibly from his parents.
Maybe. I think that's true.
He didn't think about the audience. I mean, he's talking to Mr. Chairman. Is the religious side going to affect the chairman personally? He should have thought about his audience when he was writing the speech.
Well, yeah, I wonder if the chairman was religious.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he should have taken a different defense.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
So I think we pointed out what was less effective. So Advocate 2 for same-sex marriage, what principles of effective speaking did you see in his speech? He was darling, first of all.
He was.
He was so personable and happy. And like the other guy, he was articulate and he was passionate, but he came from a place of love instead of anger.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. I loved how he talked about his mothers and how they fought sometimes, how they did family vacations together. All of a sudden you could see the love he was building at the beginning of his story, that they were a family.
Well, like any other family, a heterosexual family, everybody fights, everybody goes on vacation.
Yes.
Hey, they're the same as us.
Yeah, he drew you in with his story. That was what was so effective about it. He drew you into his story, into his life.
Yes.
And that was what was so effective of it. I was entranced. As immediately he started talking, I wanted to listen. The first guy, I was like, oh, please.
The first thing I did was look at how long that was going to be. As soon as he started, I'm like, how long is this video going to go? I did not want to see. I don't want to hear him.
I did the same thing.
I remember his name, Matt Walsh. See, I remember his name. Did the first guy say his name?
Matt Walsh was the guy who was the writer.
The one that we read.
Yeah.
The article piece.
Oh, was that it? No, the first guy is the first guy's name is Matt Walsh.
Are you sure that wasn't the blogger?
The blogger's name is Matt Walsh.
The blogger.
No, the guy who spoke is named Matt Walsh.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Okay, let me go back and look. Anyways, why do I keep thinking his name was that? Anyways, so he drew me in immediately when he started talking, because because like you said, he was so personable and so happy.
He did those principles of effective speaking. He talked about
himself.
Us and the community, and he went over stats and stuff. He was really good for just a young kid. I mean, my speeches don't even come close to his.
Attacking anybody. Yeah.
He was selling something. That's the difference. Maybe you're right. That's the difference.
Close. Okay, Zach Walls. I had the Walls in there.
I think what was, he wasn't attacking anybody, and he wasn't saying that anybody was wrong. Technically, he was just telling his story, why he felt this was. So he wasn't, by what he was saying.
I agree. What was the basis or the premise for his stance? I think we covered that. It was to relate his life to a heterosexual family's life.
Yeah. He said love makes a family. That was his stance, I think. Love makes a family, not who the family is.
And so clearly, which is a good argument. It's a powerful argument. In one of my other classes, we had to read the decision by the Supreme Court on same-sex marriage. And I went and listened, after I read the decision and the dissent, I went back and I listened to the lawyer's arguments. And that argument is so strong. It's so strong. And the argument that, the big argument for opposing same-sex marriage was children, was that you can't procreate. And it just felt like such a weaker argument, even though it's one based in truth. It just felt so much weaker than the argument on love and fairness.
Right.
And that's the argument that the second young man used. It was an argument of love and fairness, and we just want to be the same, and we don't want to hurt anybody. We just want to have the same opportunities and the same as you. So I think that was the basis of his premise, and it was effective. So if any of you are on the fence, would he have persuaded you one way or the other?
I said that he definitely persuaded me.
Oh yeah.
Totally convincing. Totally convincing. Yeah. I agree.
Well, the whole room erupted in cheers when he was finished. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Well, what I thought it was interesting that he said that you would know that he was raised by two same-sex marriage, by parents that were the same sex, because that wasn't what was important.
Yep.
And, if you looked at him, you would know that.
So here's go ahead.
Sorry. I love the part when he looked at Mr. Chairman and he said, "You would be proud of me if I were your son."
It was brilliant.
It was like, wow, brilliant on his part. All of a sudden, he had an investment. Mr. Chairman had investment in what he was saying. I mean, he was amazing. He really was.
It was brilliant. So here's the tougher question with this young man is, what was less effective about his speech?
Well, did we do the if we were on the fence one?
Yeah. But what would you do, Amanda? If you were on the fence, did he convince you if you were on the fence?
If I was on the fence, I probably would vote for gay marriage, yeah.
Okay. So did anybody see anything less effective about his speech?
No.
I didn't either. I thought he was really, really, really great.
The only thing was, and I don't know, I think it's just kind of from different speech classes that I've taken, but he used a lot of it wasn't, I can't remember the wording he used, but it was like the or
the filler words,
or the filler ones. Thank you. That's the only thing I could see, was that he used a lot of the filler kind of, like when he's blank, then he put in a few words that didn't really belong, but that was it. I
think, speaking of filler words, I think in this particular case, absolutely right. 90% of the time, all those filler words are a detriment. But in this particular case, I think it helped to humanize him and helped to put the audience kind of at ease. Like, he's not this polished, slick advocate for gay marriage. He's just this cool kid that is like, hey, I'm normal, and my family's cool, and we love each other. So I think in this particular case, it didn't hurt him. But in most other cases, filler words are no good. Moving on to the article by Matt Walsh. What principles of effective writing did you see in this article?
He started using I a lot. The first part of his paragraph is like, I this or I that. He brought us into that. And then he used you've. He used you've a lot. Y-O-U-V-E. And then he talked about the society. He did the 3 principles that we read about.
I think so too. I think he was excellent at that. What was the basis or the premise for his stance? Do you want to say something else?
Yeah. Well, I thought the beginning, he really had a good hook with the beginning of the story, of the whole article. In each paragraph had a good backstory to it as well. And when you're reading an article, you need to have a good, when you're giving a speech, it's great. But when you have an article, you want to start with a good hook and keep the person going and wanting to read it all the way down to the bottom. I took a class at BYU just a couple semesters ago about writing these articles. You want to be able to bring them in the beginning and keep them reading all the way to the bottom. And Matt really did that well with this. At the very beginning, the very top, the very first, darn it, I don't have it up, but.
I know, I'm trying to pull it up.
But the very first, let me bring it in here. I've got it right here.
Talking about the first.
Let's just say all unborn humans are homosexual, or at least could be homosexual. That immediately brings an attention right there. What?
Yeah.
So you want to keep reading immediately. That's just, wow. What is this guy talking about? So then somebody wants to read what he has to say. So.
I think that's a really good point. You have to do something to immediately get attention and draw your audience in. Okay, so what was the premise or the basis for his stance?
Christianity.
He also used historic, sorry. All right, there we go. He also used historic views of what marriage meant back then and how it's now been confused and what marriage means in these days.
I think you're right. He talked about that, what was it, the rational, the logical, and the biological factors that it should be a man and a woman for family. I remember that now. That the core of being married is Christianity, and he's an interesting blogger. I've read some of his articles. But he is a family man. Mm-hmm.
You made a comment that things tend to change depending on what the agenda is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So people's views change because this is the way people are thinking now. So let's change what we're thinking, what we're trying to, the main point of things are going to be because the agenda is changing.
Current policy, basically, right, Kathy?
Say that again.
Current policy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of what I had written also was that about the whole, current policy and like the government getting involved in that basically government needs to stay out of it, out of marriage.
So that's a tricky one, right? Because you can see his point, but also sometimes we need government to be involved for protections.
Right.
So there's the balance between regulation and protection and punishment. And so the question is how much government, I guess. And he brought that out. Talking about government.
So maybe being more fair about all the information he's sharing might be a better idea. That's a good idea. Maybe he is just one-sided. He doesn't see all the sides of his own argument.
Well, so even if you go and you look at the opposing view, sometimes I think it's hard to detach yourself from your point of view to really appreciate the opposing point of view. Mm-hmm. Again, I mean, we're in the middle of this political season, and you look and see things will come out about either of the candidates, and then their supporters will justify it away, no matter how clear-cut it is, because they don't really want to believe that. So I think to be a good researcher or a good writer, you have to be able to detach yourself from your marriage, your commitment to your point of view, in order to really be good at persuading people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be why he was maybe a little less effective, because he was only...
You could tell that he was, you could tell which, he was kind of lackluster about the opposing.
Yes, yes. He could have offered a little bit more information, I agree.
So if you were on the fence with this guy, how would you feel about same-sex marriage after reading his article?
I was kind of just nor for or against after reading his article, to be honest. I was just kind of
He didn't persuade me one way or the other.
Yeah,
he didn't push me away from my beliefs. He didn't push me toward his belief. Like, it just was, I'm with you. It was just really like, that was, another person's opinion. It didn't really push me in one direction or another.
Exactly.
And I think it's the same thing. There was no opposing view to balance it. I mean, to bounce it with. So you're only getting one view.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how an opposing view can really solidify your position in something.
Yeah, I said it to my daughter in Indonesia to have her read it because to see what she had to say, and then I went to bed because there's time difference. And that's exactly what she said. That was an interesting article. Yeah, no balance. It's just there.
So I feel like that we kind of covered what was less effective about his article.
Because there was no balance.
Yeah.
There's no balance.
I wasn't emotionally invested in his article. He didn't bring me to the article. Yeah.
There was no emotion.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't employ the three logos, ethos, pathos. He didn't do any of those. Or he only did one. It was like logos. What questions do you still have? Does anybody have questions? About his article or his position in particular, I think is what this question is for.
I didn't have any questions.
I didn't care enough after reading it to have any questions.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even care about the opposing view. I just was like, I read it and I was done, and I barely even remember reading it, to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't remember a lot about it. But I remember that kid that was for gay marriage.
Yes, I would love to have him belong to me as a son. He was amazing.
I know, he was so good.
Mm-hmm.
He was very charismatic. Is there anything else anybody wanted to add?
Not me. It was a great discussion. Who's summarizing?
I am right now. I'm thinking.
Y'all should really go. It's like 100 pages, but you should go and read the decision on same-sex marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's
really
interesting.
What's that?
Who has not read it?
Have you all read it?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've read parts of it.
It's long. There's 105 pages of it.
Mm-hmm.
But
sorry. My daughter came in and started talking. What was it that you were saying that we should read?
the decision on same-sex marriage, the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage.
Oh, I haven't read that. I've kind of like skimmed through part and heard of it and stuff, but I haven't gone through and actually read it.
The dissent is powerful.
Mm.
The decision is convincing, and it's you can see how they roundabout kind of came to their decision, but I think the dissent is so powerful.
It really is.
And it has little to do with religion. Religion comes in a little bit, but it is mostly, it's constitutional, and it's just really good. It's really good. The arguments were interesting too. I listened to those. I listened to because I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear them. I wanted to hear their voices as they argued. It was interesting.
All right, are we ready to hear the what I?
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm not real good at doing this, so hopefully I've covered all this. So, number one, advocate number one. So he brought what was effective. He brought data from the biblical point of view, and he was passionate. The basis and our premise for his stance. He didn't state his basis. He just stated his age, but said he was there to talk on behalf of the Lord and sin. He kept attacking. He used scripture as condemnation.
He was arrogant. I think it just popped into my head. Arrogance was the problem with that guy.
Okay, so that goes down there with the less effective. If you were on the fence, you'd go the opposite way.
Yeah.
That's basically what we all agreed on. So less effective, he was judgmental. He was very angry. He was focused on the sin and not the family. And he didn't think about the audience. And like I said, he was arrogant.
An extremist.
And there was a comment that he was probably brought up in a very strong religious family.
Yeah.
Just
the focus was more on religion than the actual discussion that was brought into the group.
Well, you know, that other kid said that he went to church too.
Yeah.
Harry,
what was that about the religion?
Well, we thought that he might be so passionate, or we thought that he may be coming from a religious background is why he was so adamant in his position.
So he didn't focus on the issue of family, but he focused more on the scripture references, and he didn't tie the issue into his information that he used.
Right.
Okay, advocate two.
So the effective speaking on number two, he was personable, he was happy, and he came from a place of love. He makes me smile just thinking about him. He drew you into his story. He wasn't attacking anybody, and he wasn't turning anybody off. The basis, it was to relate his life to a heterosexual's life. He said love makes a family. If you were on the fence, he completely convinced you to the same-sex side, because he said you wouldn't know he was raised by same-sex partners, which is true. You looked at him, he you know, it's just a normal kid. He pointed out to the chairman, and he pointed to the chairman and said, "Mr. Chairman, you would be proud of me if I were your son." The only less effective point that was made was, you know, some other filler words, but you know, like you said, it made him more human. But that was the only thing that we could find in this whole speech. That he was a great kid. I would take him home. He reminded me of my nephew, who's been raised in the same-sex household, so I'd take him home. That was that one. Anybody? Okay, so then Matt Walsh. He talked a lot about society. He had a great hook at the beginning of the article, and I kept it reading. You want to add anything to the beginning of that?
He talked about himself as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about us.
Society.
Yeah, I got that. He talked about society.
Mm-hmm.
The basis was Christianity, historic views and what marriage meant in the past and what it means now. Things tend to change according to what the agenda is, current policy, government getting involved and needing to stay out of marriage. But it's tricky because there is a need to have protection. Did I cover that one? Okay. If you're on the fence, he didn't persuade one way or the other. It was an interesting article, but there's no opposing view to balance it out. But that's also on the less effective part of it, because there's no balance. It's not emotionally. There's no emotionally balanced. I put not emotionally balanced in the article. I don't know if that's a good sentence or not, but it's what I have here. He didn't employ the 3 emotions in there.
He was boring.
It was boring.
Yeah.
That's like rule number 1, don't be boring.
Jesse found it boring.
He was like a terrible high councilman talk. Wasn't good.
Yeah.
I actually found it interesting. So just reading it, I don't know, I found it interesting. It kept my attention. Any questions? I don't know, somebody said I didn't care enough to have any more questions, but remember, the kid was for gay marriage. He was very charismatic, and we all agreed you should really read the decision on same-sex marriage. I cover it?
I think so. That was good.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Carrie Peabody.
I'm Jesse Keller.
I'm Jennifer Dodson.
I'm Amanda Kimball.
And Kathy Fear.
This has been brought to you by... No, I'm just kidding.
This message has been approved by... I approve this message.
See you guys next week.